Okay, so here's what we're going to do with this. So everybody was there anybody who was not able to do a test, to get a test observation in? Anybody not able to do that? Okay, so I don't see any looks of horror. All right, so we got that far. All right, so what we're after, like I said the other day, is some proficiency, some skill, some comfortable comfort level with using this, and it's simple, right? So we got a sense for that. In giving you the three species ID modules, which most of you did, some of you have yet to do those. So do that quickly if you want some points. The ones that I had you do, excuse me, wait a minute. You did multiflora rose, Norway maple, and oh yeah, Japanese barberry. And of those, anybody more familiar with any one of those than the others? Like even before doing the module, I mean, you've seen all these for sure. They're all those are pretty common. Okay, well, what we're gonna do, okay, let me move that over, is what I want you to do between now and Thursday is get a couple of practice, well, not practice, observations into the mobile app. All right, so you don't, so some of you had, who has kind of not so wonderful service where they're at? Was that Sierra Amo, right? I think. Anybody else? So your service, okay. So what you can do is you can create those records, and you can actually upload them. You can actually upload them later, like when you get close to Wi-Fi. Okay, so you should be able to go out there somewhere and find a couple of these invasives and mark those, and then upload the records later. Okay, either way, if all else fails, you'll be able to do that record, and then you can send to me some. You can fit all of an observation in 1, 2, and 3 screenshots. I just scrolled through on my phone how much we'd have to just to screenshot that. Okay, so that would be, if nothing else, that would work. All right. So let's let me show you Norway maple. It's an easy tree to identify, but it's also, that's easy for me to say. I know that, like, if any of you are taking field botany, you'll be to the point you'll never get that tree wrong, but I can't get to that point in short order now. So initially I was thinking, oh, Norway maple, it's very common, but it would be very easy if in 3 weeks from now, when all the leaves were open, which they are not where I'm at, where Kylan's at, and some of you others, I don't know, some of you are in areas that their growing season might be 2.5 weeks ahead of us right here. Maddie, your leaves are probably well out, I would imagine, in many cases. You can actually see, identify, but we do not have that here now. So what we've got to do is to find a couple of plant species that are easily recognized throughout the entire year. Okay, so that is one of the reasons I picked the Japanese barberry and multiflora rose. Okay, and then Norway spruce, like we saw in Maddie's backyard there, that is one that is very easy to recognize as well. So now you all should have done the Japanese barberry module by now. Some of you have not. And then also the multiflora rose. And those modules are good for sure, but let me show you. I've got an older, it was put together by another student a while ago, multiflora rose. Let me show you some key stuff there, and basically some additional photos. Okay, so the idea here is that you know how to recognize this plant, and it'll be one of those that you can search for, and if you find it, we can use it as your species. Okay, and then we'll go over Japanese barberry. I'll show you a couple of key things there. That's another one that's common as dirt. Like if you live in town, chances are you can walk within 100 feet of your front door. You can find somebody who's got Japanese barberry in the yard. And if you live out in the country, chances are still pretty good. Somebody's got this in their hedgerows, but if you, you know, you can get yourself somewhere to take a walk in town. Any place with sidewalks, you know, you're going to have flower beds close enough that you'll be able to see this, that plant, and then and Norway spruce. Okay, so between those three, I'm going to show you some of the key identification stuff there, and we'll use those to get the ball rolling. All right. Oop, here. Okay, I'm trying to get you all open up here in the grid. Oh, and fair warning, kids. At the end of this whole thing, we're going. Okay, so here, how many of you follow do Twitter? The college's Twitter. No Twitter. How many? Can you? 1, 2, 3 out of us. What about how many? How about Instagram? A couple more, but not everybody. Actually, like several more. All right, so I don't know, for you Twitter followers, have you been watching the daily short video from faculty and staff? You seen any of those? Asia has. Okay, well, guess who got asked to put one together for the 50th anniversary of Earth Day tomorrow? So you know what I'm thinking, Asia and others. We need to have, how many we got here? 3, 5, 6, 18 of us. I want to have, when we get done here, before we go, 18 of you. Okay, the best I could come up with is at the end of the thing is to have a whole bunch of us say Happy Earth Day. Can you think of anything better? Anything less corny or more corny? More corny would be good. All right, we'll do that as a group when you're ready. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about that. Anyway, I'm going to make my video. It's going to be a call for some advocacy because I'm tired of people just sugarcoating things about Earth Day right now. Anyway, all right, so I'm sharing the multiflora rose with you, right? We're seeing that? Okay. All right, so key stuff. I mean, really key right now. So I'm trying to zoom in on these images, collect it here. Okay, during the height of the growing season, these are loaded with these white flowers like you see here, but we're not at the height of the growing season, but you've seen multiflora rose. It is a very, very common invasive, excuse me, we find it out not typically in well-maintained areas. Like most people don't have this in their yard. They might, because it's not an unattractive plant. I mean, it's actually very attractive. These bright, I mean, pure white flowers. It's just loaded with them, but they're fairly small. Okay, so these are not as big as our cultivated roses. That whole flower cluster right there might be kind of in the order of like a baseball. Okay, and the flowers themselves, instead of having many, many, many petals like a rose you buy for Valentine's Day, right? Or the cultivated roses that most people have in their front yard, if they have roses, I should say, where you have many, many layers of flowers. Okay, this is just a relatively simple flower, 5 petals. It's in the rose family. That whole bunch of them includes cherry trees, apple trees, pear trees, etc. All those plants have 5 petals, and it's just loaded with these flowers in the middle of the growing season. Okay, makes it easy to identify. So you've seen these, so maybe you've got in your, like in the depths of your mind, you know where some of you might see some of these, right? Could be the farmer's field, your field. Okay, so that might be a clue. Like think where you've seen these. Okay, none of our cultivated roses look like this. The clumps can be massive, and they typically kind of come up and they swoop out. Okay, so a lot of our cultivated roses, because people are trying to make them flower, and if they know what they're doing, they don't just let them grow wildly. They keep them trimmed back and keep sort of a compact shape. Multiflora rose out in that abandoned pasture, along a fence row, roadsides. Given enough time, it big clumps. And this time of year, without the leaves on there, if the leaves aren't out where you live right now yet, pretty easy to recognize that with a little bit of, once your eye gets in tune with that, so that the stems come up and they kind of swoop out. And then as it gets older, as the stems get longer, they basically kind of outgrow themselves a little bit. They sort of almost tip down and can actually reach the ground. And they'll root if they do that. but these clumps can get massive, right? You can find these, you don't see it so much around central New York here, as big as like where I grew up in Pennsylvania, down where Maddie is, you know, a little bit longer growing season. You see clumps that are sometimes 10 feet tall, 15 feet wide. Okay, now they've been there for a while. That's not growth in just a couple of years. It's a perennial shrub, but they get massive. All right. One of the dead giveaways now is the thorns, which we can see easily if the leaves aren't there. Your view is unobstructed. Okay, and the thorns are curved backwards. So if my arm is the twig, those thorns stick back. Right. So here's the leaves out here. The thorns they're not sticking straight out like a raspberry or a blackberry bush, right? Those will scrape you, but they won't hook and hold like these will. Okay, so those thorns are curved. That's a feature of roses. Okay, cultivated roses have this, multiflora rose. All right, so if you're walking in town and you see something with it's called recurved, curved, recurved thorns. Okay, if it's in a place that it looks like somebody probably planted there with intention, it's almost certainly not multiflora rose. But if it is, you know, like places where there's not really active maintenance, people aren't trimming back the shrubs, they're not weeding, they're not using a weed whacker, string trimmer, or a mower. All right, you'll find multiflora rose in those kinds of places. All right, and if you do see something looks like this and has those recurved thorns, 99.8% of the time it's going to be multiflora rose. All right, and the module pointed out at the base of the leaves, can you see these sort of hair-like structures well enough? Yeah, so those are called stipules. So they're extensions of the leaf. They are part of the leaf. This is very conspicuous in multiflora rose. Some of the other rose varieties will have it to some extent, but in multiflora rose, it's very conspicuous. And by that, I mean it's very easy to see, it's apparent, and it's consistent. So, but that's going to be if it's already started to leaf out, okay? So, Kylan, this isn't going to help you or me because we're not that far, right? We got snow outside right now again. Okay, also, you may find last year's fruits. Birds do get these, but sometimes they don't get them all. And let's see if there's a better, oops. Oh, I don't have a good picture of that here. Well, there's one close up. The rose, they're red. They're called hips. That's the name of a rose's fruit. Okay, and so these are berry size. These are like sort of like the size of a green pea, like a bag of frozen peas. Imagine them all sort of a bright holly berry red, right? That's what they look like. Okay, but those may or may not be present because, like I said, birds and other wildlife, they like those, and so those have been, those are left over from at the end of last year's growing season. So those things have been exposed to, consumption by summer animals for the last 6-7 months, something like that. Okay. All right. So, all right, quiz time. Who's ready? Who's falling asleep? Sierra Gunderson, are you sleeping? All right, you're up. And who else looks a little tired? Erica. All right, what's the key? What's the key points here? Key take homes. Come on. Sierra.
Overall.
Yeah.
The thorns.
What about them? Go on.
The shape of them, and then they have the little hair things at the end, at the bottom of the stem.
Okay, bottom of the stem of the leaf.
Stipules,
yep.
or whatever, right?
Huh?
The stipules. What are they
those are called stipules. That was hair-like. Okay. Yep. All right. Good.
Am I good?
You're good. I was gonna say one for Erica. Go ahead, Erica.
Well, she just took what I was gonna say. So.
What?
She took what I was gonna say.
What about the growth form, Erica?
Like bush-like, I guess.
Okay, keep going. Yep, you're right. You're on the track. All right, come on. Somebody else jump in. Not being a smart ass, just trying to keep you engaged. So a lot of it's a clump of stems, right? All right, they go straight up? No, they don't, right? They curve out. Okay, so sort of a vase-like shape. All right. Okay, so there's one. All right, that one's an easy one to recognize. Everybody, actually, I had the Japanese knotweed stuff. I mean, we looked at that. That was Delaney's species. But any of you have Japanese knotweed popped up yet? We're starting to see a little bit of it here.
Isn't there a lot near like where Empire used to be? Remember the cornfield next there?
I mean, there's a number of patches along that stretch of 13. Yeah, I think there's some there. Okay, well, oops. Okay, let me show you a couple of, let me just pull up some images here. That one, if you, show you a couple of images here, what it looks like when it's young. And it is pretty, if it is grown enough that to see what I'm gonna show you, come on, web. It's easy to recognize. Oh man, Firefox is being slow, of course. There we go. Japanese knotweed is the one that sort of vaguely, it actually strongly resembles bamboo. Okay, now, but this is easy to recognize for a number of reasons. Even if it hasn't really popped out of the ground very far this year, the stems from last year, they're substantial, so they're still there. I mean, we had a pretty good snow pack this year, so that's what kind of tends to break them down and put them on the ground. But they're tough enough that typically you can, if you got a well-established patch, you can still see that it's Japanese knotweed. Oh, and of course this thing is taking forever. The other one I'm going to show you is Norway spruce. Oh, I wanted to show you Phragmites. That's one that's going to be really easy to potentially find as well.
Did you want me to add Phragmites to the app? Because I can just go to the lake house and take a couple pictures of that too. Because we're like right next to the swamp, just north of that bridge.
Mm-hmm. Did you say lake house?
Yeah, we have my aunt and uncle's house.
Oh,
we're on the lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that part in the swamp right above the dam where there's that walkway.
Yeah.
That's their property.
Oh, really? That kind of beat up.
It's right on the corner, so I can easily get in.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Absolutely. That'll work. So our objective here, everybody, for I'm showing you some plants that are easy to recognize. Okay. So because we're not together, I can't go out there and show you. I can't walk you through using examples here. So that's what we're going at here. All right. So I'm going to share. All right. So I'm sharing the Phragmites. Oops. Share button. Okay, so this is very common. This might be the easiest and one of the more common ones for you to be able to find somewhere. These images, are these big enough to see? I mean, okay. Still getting used to the fact that it's sounding like you all can see things as well as I am right here, but I guess it depends on how big of a monitor or screen you're looking at it on there. But Phragmites is, right this time of year, the old stuff, the dead stuff from last year looks more like this right here, right? So there you're seeing a good idea of the size. It doesn't always grow well above an adult size person's head, but frequently, like it's uncommon to find it less than 5 or 6 feet tall. And these plumes of that tan, sort of feathery looking structure, right? Dead giveaway, easy to identify. Fortunately, from an identification standpoint, we really don't have anything that looks like that right around here. And I don't think any of you live any place that has anything comparable either. Here's top of the mitt. It's probably a marine. I don't know where's tip of the mitt. Oh, is that up in I think this is a photo from the Great Lakes region. Is that, that might be wild rice, but we don't, chances are like you don't have wild rice right in your backyard. Okay, so this is very common. Stems are durable. Like I said, even the stems from last year, they're still standing. They're just brown, right? And it's a perennial. It does die back, but what you're seeing left over from last year, it is dead. And what you can probably see in most places, I don't know about here right now, but many of you are sitting in a place that has a bit more mild climate than we have right here in Kaz. So you're probably starting to see that come up out of the ground. Okay, so Phragmites, pay attention to that spelling, right? PHR, and then it's oftentimes called common reed. That is the most common name for it, common reed, even though technically it's not a reed. It's actually a grass. Okay, so there's one. Easy to recognize. You know what? Let's see. Can I just spruce? Is this working? Like you're feeling like you're gonna be able to recognize these things? Sierra, did you fall asleep? Jacqueline?
Dr. Yerkes, I have a question about the app and
app?
invasive species overall. Broadleaf cattail, can't that be invasive in aquatic system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it can be. It can be for sure in areas that where it becomes so prolific that it outcompetes other types of vegetation. It's a little tricky. Okay, when we're looking through that really lengthy list in the app, some of these species that are readily recognized as invasive in some parts of the state or the nation are not here, and vice versa. I think I saw narrow leaf cattail in that list as well when I was scrolling through one time, and that's the first I'd ever.
Broadleaf isn't there. But you said narrowleaf. Yeah, narrowleaf cattail's there. So I can probably get a couple pictures there if you want those by Thursday or something.
Yeah, okay. All right, so oops, not this other thing. All right, so where you go or how far from home, I'm not really concerned. You know, if you can find a bunch of these, I mean, okay, so let me say this. Okay, today's Tuesday. Before Thursday, let's figure on you getting 5 observations, okay? And 5 observations that it's useless to have them, you know, if we got like this line of Norway spruce trees right here, right? We're not gonna log this one in the foreground as an observation and the one that's 20 feet behind it. Basically, you're marking populations, okay, at particular locations. So keep that in mind. So, you know, what will be the threshold distance? Can't give you an exact number. I mean, but I would say, you know, think about a population. Basically, from one place to another, you shouldn't be seeing the same plant. Okay, in other words, one observation point should be farther enough away from the other observation points that you're not actually seeing the same plant and marking that. Okay, now tall trees, that would be an exception, right? Obviously, depending on the landscape, you could be half a mile away and still see the same tree from half a mile from the other observation point, but you know what I mean, right? Not visible on the ground. Okay. Okay, so Norway spruce, classic. Okay, so I looked this up and it's got all these varieties in here. But the plain old, nothing special cultivated variety looks a lot like this, okay? And so it's a little bit greeny. I'm sharing the photo, right? Seeing the photo? Norway spruce, okay, good. All right, there we go. Well, okay, it's not a lot better, but it's a little bigger. That's actually a very good photo of one, especially from, whoa, okay, from imagine, follow this line across there. From there up, that's classic. Down at the bottom here, that's kind of a weird photo. You usually don't see the lower branches distinctly wider than the rest. I don't know what that's about. that is atypical, not normal. But from here on up, that is normal. Typical classic Christmas tree shape, kind of like an upside down sugar cone, right? And the branches extend more or less horizontally, and sometimes they kind of swoop up and then they tip down, and you can see that here as well in some cases. All right, but the key is the twigs. The smallest twigs, they're droopy, okay, and that's a dead giveaway, right? If you see that, it's almost certainly a Norway spruce, okay? The only exceptions we have to that, and you're really unlikely to run into these, is we do have some weeping, so-called weeping varieties of other spruces developed, but those are really expensive, right? People that are just really into having unique specimens, those are the only people that buy those, okay? So that's like I say, the almost complete certainty it's going to be a Norway spruce. You find them, if you got a golf course nearby, golf courses plant these. They're tough. They're really tough trees, which is one of the reasons they are planted widely, and it's one of the reasons they have become invasive and are considered invasive in many places. But not crazily. They haven't invaded many woodlands like right here where we are in Central New York. I would not consider these invasive. Like, I would not put any effort really into getting too concerned about them. I'm not sure I'd recommend planting them widely, but that would just because there's so many of them already. They're just not that interesting, but they're tough as hell. They withstand road salt, right? We can plant Norway spruces in places that all the rest of our natives, they can't handle it. So that's why we've got it planted widely. All right, so that's Norway spruce. Oh, anybody know, how do you tell a spruce? Like, what, if you're up close, how do you know it's a spruce, not a pine? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, pines have their needles in clusters, and they're longer, right? So imagine pine, like white pine, this, like that. Not as wide as my head, but as long as my finger, all right? And then our spruce needles, imagine somewhere, in the approaching an inch in length, okay? So much shorter. And spruce needles are single. They're one by one on the twig. Spruce, firs, Douglas fir, those are all individual. But what you're gonna be looking for is this droopy twig growth form. All right, let me show you one other feature of that. Where's my image? And let me show you the cones. Okay. The cones are also, these are a dead giveaway, and they are prolific cone producers. So if it's a mature tree, really good chance you're going to be able to see some of the cones up in the canopy from last year or years past, and or you're going to see a bunch on the ground. All right, so let me go down. So here's a good examples of the shape of it. So it's basically like a kielbasa, right? A sausage, like for a sausage sandwich. And they're big. They are the biggest spruce cones in this part of the world. I'm looking for something that has them for scale. Here we go. There's somebody's hand. All right, so that's an adult size hand, and you can see they are, going more than the width of the hand. Okay, and that's common. And to see them in that condition this time of year is very normal. So these are probably, if I had to guess, I'd say this was taken early growing season. These are last year's cones. This cone right here, this is from the red squirrels. Red squirrels love these things, but chipmunks and gray squirrels will get the seeds out of there too. But red squirrels really love to work on these things. Okay, so that's another dead giveaway. They're so heavy that they hang like this, not only at the top, but most wind pollinated plants tend to produce their reproductive parts relatively high up in the plant. That just makes evolutionary sense. But they're big enough that even at a distance, you'll see those hanging down, and they're big enough that unless your eyesight is really kind of poor, you can identify this at a distance really easily. Okay. All right, so there's that one. Okay, let's see. I was going to show you a Japanese knotweed. Okay, Japanese knot. Beautiful. All right, here we go. Here's a good early season photo. Maroon, bright maroon stems, relatively thick, like hot dog thickness at the base, and they are very distinctly tapered out towards the end. So if this stem, they really very distinctly, as they grow, They grow in length, so they're getting taller and taller. But as they go, the rest of the stem is getting thicker and thicker. So you can imagine this cone is getting like bigger and bigger as you go up towards the top. All right, so again, remember, sort of like hot dog thickness at the base, and then you can already see that bamboo. Can you see the light colored joints there? It's jointed like bamboo. Okay, so that's a dead giveaway. We do have, there are a few true bamboos that will survive our climate here, but they are not widely planted. I can think of one patch of an actual bamboo species here in the village of Kaz, and I could show you 100 patches of Japanese knotweed in a half an hour around here. Okay, so eventually they get big, but you're not going to see this, right, until towards the end of the growing season. But stems look like that. Eventually, a lot of that maroonness, that maroon feature goes away, and most of the stems will look like this, kind of spotty and some maroon left, but they'll start to go to a normal plant green. And let me try one more thing. I'm just going to type in dead Japanese knotweed. So it looks like for well-established patches where you've got stuff left over from last year. Okay, well, here we got, as good as any. Oops, make that a little bit bigger. They're a mess. This plant is, if we could figure out something useful to do with this and good ways of harvesting it, like mechanically figure it out, that would be something, because it grows quick, very productive. All right, so there you go. That's a really good example there. Okay, so you can see this is kind of matted down over in the background, but here's some of these biggest stems are pretty well intact. Kylan, up there where your aunt, right? Your aunt and uncle live? I forget, what's the name of that, there's that road that goes around the circle back there, Kaz Heights area, whatever that is. If you go by their place, and then very shortly you either go straight or you hang a right, and there's a 1 block circle, and then in the backside the Sparks' house is kind of, it'd be like the farthest to the northeast. Anyway, there's a big patch of knotweed around that circle. I always take field botany up there for a quiz. We go around that block. We can see about 80 different plant species. We don't know them all by the time we do it, but it's a fun place to go once everybody's kind of getting the hang of some identification stuff. There's a lot of neat stuff up there. Okay, so let me delete my notes. So who's falling asleep? Noah, what all we cover here, species-wise? Noah.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Phragmites, Japanese knotweed, that other one that we did the module on, and the other one we did the module on.
Oh, multiflora rose. That was one of them.
Yeah, that's it.
So Japanese knotweed we just did. Norway spruce right before that. Phragmites before that. Multiflora rose. No, we didn't do, Noah?
What didn't we do?
We did not do Japanese barberry.
Oh.
And I could see the gleam in your eye is telling me you want to see a couple of photos of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. All right. This is an easy one. They're all easy. That's why we're, oh yeah, barberry. All right, you did the module on this one. This one is easy to recognize because of the single thorn, the single thin and very sharp thorn along the twigs. All right, this one, in contrast to multiflora rose, doesn't get nearly as big. So you're seeing here some, a lot of these times you see Japanese barberry is going to be waist high, maybe like armpit high, but that would be pretty unusual. But if they are that big, it's very few stems, right? So sort of like, imagine like a really thick basal portion of it, and then relatively few stems sticking up, kind of like this one up here. Right, so this one's kind of out of hand. A lot of people trim these back. I mean, you almost have to, or they just, as they grow, they will keep growing, but they'll break. They break apart if you allow them to grow too much. Okay. A lot of the Japanese barberry you see out there in the growing season, they have maroon foliage. Not all of them, but many of them. And this is the one that from that module you saw that they have did a really nice job. Here we go, of showing you the sort of the spade or spatula shaped leaves, right? But they are not. The margin is called entire. They're not toothed. Entire just means it's smooth. So it's very plain. Oh, it's a YouTube video. I don't want that.
What does a pretty landscape plant have to do with sharp thorns and Lyme disease? In this setting, you'd say nothing, right? A few sharp spines for this pretty.
Okay, back to photos here. All right, so there's the leaves. They might, pretty good chance some of you have a few of these that are starting to pop out, but until those leaves expand, that feature can be difficult. The berries, the fruits are very distinct. They're bright red, almost exclusively across the different varieties that we planted. But they're not spherical. They are more egg-shaped, okay? And you can see that here. So they are, somebody took a sphere and kind of rolled it in their hands once or twice to thin it to make it a little bit of a, what is that shape? An ellipse, right? Which is actually more what it is than an egg shape. But the birds do like these, but oftentimes, especially in town, if you find a place where there's a number of these bushes, the birds just don't get to all of them. So it's pretty common to still see them even this time of year from last year. The twigs, if the leaves are not out, the twigs are really easy to recognize because, oops, they're very thin, like I don't know, looking around the office, they're like as thin as the wire on this clothespin-ish. Okay, so among the thinnest of the twigs out there. And here we go. This is excellent. These things are miserable. Anybody got these at home? I gotta trim them and rake these. Sarah, you love them?
I kind of forgot we had them as you were going over it. Everything like reminded me that we actually have one. We have a couple on the side of our house. I think my dad trims them. I don't really go near them.
You would remember if you trimmed them because those little thorns, they're very sharp, and which means they are great at getting into your skin, but they're not very strong and they break off. So it's like if you don't, your forearms, if you're not using gloves, your hands, you're gonna itch, because even if they didn't leave part of the thorn behind, they scratch the skin and you have a little bit of an allergic reaction to it. And they're just a miserable plant to deal with. I hate them. But they got me through a lot of college dealing with this kind of stuff. The landscaper I used to work for. But anyway, so the twigs are thin and the thorns are individual. This is an excellent photo right here. Okay. And where each, excuse me, so there's one thorn at each, it's called the node. The node is the point of leaf attachment. One thorn per node. Okay. And they're very consistent in length and thickness and sharpness. All right. That is different than some other species, but some of you will learn more about that in the fall when we compare these to some other plants out there. But okay, so there's some excellent photos there. Okay, and shoot, what was I going to tell you? Oh, I know what it was. Okay, so this is Japanese barberry. It is from Japan. Oh, I got an email about our iMaps project. As I'm talking, I'm actually trying to see if we can see what it says. It might be because I think it's in response to some of our activity here today. This is Japanese barberry. Okay, so it is from Asia, not just Japan. Oh, okay. Hang on. Hot news off the press here. If I can get my email to go to the right place. Okay, here we go. All right. Come on, open it. So Japanese barberry, this is invasive, and you will find this. I mean, not commonly, but it is not uncommon to find this out in the middle of the woods. You'll find this many way out in the woods. I've seen this up in parts like even in the Adirondacks. Not pretty rare, but like around central New York, our woodlots around here, State Forest, Nelson Swamp. I found this as far away from any normal human activity as you can imagine. The problem is the birds love the berries. Eat the berry, digest the fleshy part, the soft, juicy stuff, and they crap out the seeds wherever they've processed it. So you end up with these way out there. Okay. Now we have an American barberry, a native species. Fortunately for us, it is very easy to distinguish the two. And this email is taking its time coming up here. So let me show you American barberry quick. Really minimal chance you're going to find American barberry because it's kind of it's not widely planted. The only people that plant this are like plant nerdly people like I would, because I'd be interested in having a native version of this species in my backyard. But it's not all that attractive. It does not grow as nice and compact. It grows kind of spindly, scraggly, very open growth form. So for a lot of people, they don't really like that. They don't want that. Okay. All right. So here's I looked up American barberry. I'm looking at this thing. Why am I getting all this Japanese barberry? They're just picking up on that. But right here's how you tell American barberry. Okay. It very consistently has 3 thorns, the middle one being a bit longer than the other 2, almost like a turkey's foot, something like that. Okay, so that's American barberry. Dead giveaway. Japanese barberry, just a single thorn there. Otherwise, the fruits look very similar. And as a native shrub, I mean, this one it's a native shrub. It provides a lot of food for wildlife. I would not want to have to trim it, to maintain it, because it's miserable to deal with in that respect. But if you're just going to plant it and let it go, this would be a good choice. Okay. All right. So there's that. Okay. All right. So here we go. Hot off the presses. This is from, I'm looking at my email here, Mitchell O'Neill. He's with the iMapInvasives project team with the New York Natural Heritage Program. That's a collaborative effort between the DEC and a number of other organizations. So thanks to that, I set you up as admin and administrator. Okay, so in my head, I was mixing up the fact that I responded to his email, but now I actually did that. So made you an IMAP invasives project. Oh, I see that you made an IMAP invasive project for college course. Very cool! Exclamation point! Added Keswick College regulation for that project since it would not have let you do so when you originally created it before you were an admin. Okay, all right. So that's that should address a number of the issues we were trying to solve as we were getting started. And that's cool, I think. All right. Okay, so there's 5 species, 5 invasive plant species. Anybody not think they're going to be able to find some of those? Thumbs up if you can.
I definitely can. I know exactly where that Japanese knotweed is.
I bet, yeah. You start looking around and thinking about or paying a little more attention than you would ever maybe have reason to. Yeah, you're going to find these. Okay, beautiful. All right, let's take a couple-minute break so some of you can get up. We got about another 10, 15 minutes. Let's do our Happy Earth Day thing. You guys game for that? Yes. All right,
Can you just do a rundown of what we're supposed to do?
What?
What are we supposed to do?
All right, so I've been asked to do a 45, no longer than a 60-second little video about Earth Day. So I was going to my plan, so I'm just leading in, give you some context for it. So tomorrow's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I was thinking about going over, and if I would have got this message a little bit earlier, I could have had some really nice background because we hiked some of those brook trout that Asia got going, and I've been continuing to raise. Hiked them into our neighbor's pond yesterday, but the message just got buried, so I didn't see it until I got a reminder this morning. So anyway, what I was thinking about is going over in front of the fish tank, and I don't know. So I'll make something totally corny up. It'd be like 1 60-second dad joke, something about my 100 little friends behind me wishing you Happy Earth Day or something like that. But I was thinking about making it sort of a call for some advocacy, because nothing drives me more crazy when people are just rainbows and unicorns about Earth Day, and they think because they went out and pick up a piece of trash on one day out of the year that, okay, we'll do it again next year. So I don't know. I'm gonna probably have to do it a couple times and let it simmer so it's not dark. But so anyway, but towards the end, I'm thinking, so to end things, you're always supposed to end on a highlight, right? So not a grumpy face, is something like, and now something, you know, from the invasive species class, happier, something like that. What do you think? All right, so you got to turn your microphones off. I mean, on. You got to unmute. Matt, can you turn your camera on? Matt with a T. Oh, Matt's not in here.
No, it doesn't work.
Oh, dang it. Where's Jack? Oh, there he is. All right. So you got to unmute yourself. Oh, I can actually do it from here. All right, let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. All right, you ready? So we'll do it a couple of times because it won't work right. Okay, you ready? What should I say? Should I from invasive species or from the biology and environmental biology kids or students? What do you think?
Whatever you think is best.
Yeah, I don't think we have a choice, honestly.
What?
Yeah. Surprise us.
It's a voluntold thing once again.
Asia? Okay. All right, ready? So we're going to do Happy Earth Day. Okay, so from all of us, Happy Earth. That's all of us.
Oh.
Maybe there's too much lag.
You have to do a countdown.
Yeah, do a countdown.
All right, so I just do it by hand because I am hearing a little bit of delay. All right, so it'll be 3, 2, 1, Happy Earth Day, right? Gonna do it right.
Happy Earth
Day.
Oh my God.
I was on time, so I don't know what you guys are doing.
That was like 10%. All right, you ready? Come on, we gotta do
Scream like.
what?
Yeah.
I mean, some enthusiasm. Happy Earth Day. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Happy
Earth
Earth
Day. That was better. All right, let's do it one more time. 3, 2,
Happy Earth Day.
all right. We'll see what it sounds like.
Sounds like happy birthday.
Yeah, it does sort of have like happy. Actually, oh, here we go. Maybe how about this? Maddie, you are dead center. How about you do it? So we hear one voice.
No.
Yeah, do it. Come on.
What do you want me to say? Happy Earth Day?
Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Ready? So for Maddie and the rest of us.
What? Wait, what?
So we have one voice that is actually audible, like can
Okay.
be
You want me to use mine? Okay.
Yeah, because you are, in my view, what I'm recording right now, you are right in the middle. You are the center of our universe right now, Maddie. Okay?
Yeah.
So from all of us.
Happy Earth Day.
Okay, that was good. I mean, I can at least hear what you were saying.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you. Thank you for playing, kids. Bunch of punks. All right, let me move this over. Okay. All right, so what you're gonna do for Thursday, okay, is get 5 observations in there, right, in the iMapInvasives, and do what you can with before maybe all of you got back in the meeting. A couple of us were trying to figure out. Well, we got error message for trying to join to make your affiliation CAS College. Hopefully, it's just a temporary, will work later kind of thing. But even if it doesn't, it's not going to stop us. All right. So do 5 observations, right? And a photo good enough to for me to be able to tell if it's the species that you're saying it is, right? Any combination of those what we do? We covered 5 species. All right, so it's 5 of all the same. I mean, that's okay. Or if it's 1 of each, that's okay. Some combination. All right, you know what we're after. All right, now I'm gonna take you back a ways to and knock this out here in time we have left. I do believe I want to take you back to last week when we were talking about the excuse me, Panama Canal. Yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, share the screen. Show you what I'm seeing. Okay, so back last week. Was it last week? Oh, it might have been the week before, because last week we only meet twice a week. So Thursday we were dealing with iMap, this software. Last Tuesday was your exam. So this must have been the week before. We were talking about the canal systems, right? We talked about the Suez Canal, and then we were in the midst of the Panama Canal, right? Okay. So remember what we were talking about way back then is so we're connecting obviously the Atlantic and the Pacific through the Isthmus of Panama. And I believe the last thing we were doing is I was trying to get you to think about what the landscape must look like between the Atlantic here in the upper left and the Pacific over on the lower right. Because remember, the isthmus kind of does a funky thing such that if you think about the length of the Panama Canal, it's actually the Pacific side is to the east and the Atlantic side is to the west, which is the opposite of what we think about, like on a map where they are in the big picture. But anyway, what we see here, what I was trying to show to you a week and a half ago, I guess, is I was pointing out that the joggers, the river here, okay, dumps into the Atlantic, but if we follow this upstream all the way up here at this little village, what was then a little village called Culebra, right? Here's where it begins. And then if you're going from the Atlantic and you literally have to paddle upstream or hike uphill if you're along this, up, increasing elevation. And then here is the highest point, the ridge, essentially, a continental divide between the Atlantic drainage and the Pacific drainage. And then you very quickly, actually, you would get to a small stream that would be the headwaters that is the Panama's Rio Grande, right? Big river, which it's not very big. It's kind of comical that they got that name where it is and how long that is. Okay. I think I might have got as far as saying we had built a railroad to take goods from one side to the other, but that was pretty inefficient because that meant a ship coming in would have to offload its goods onto that railroad, take it over rail all the way to the other side, then put it on another ship. All right, so that's better than going down around South America, but still rather inefficient. So the idea of building a canal so that the ships could directly move from one ocean to the other got traction in the mid to late 1800s. People have been thinking about this for a long time before that, but it wasn't until we started to see the success of some other canals that those thoughts started to kind of approach reality. So here's a basic timeline. This isn't terribly important from a topics of course standpoint, except for the fact that this canal has been in place a long enough time that it would have the potential, obviously, the longer it's there, to potentially allow species to move from one side to the other. Okay. Some of the things that happened along the way, and what actually make up a step. One of the reasons I show you this time frame, this big project, the development of that was over a number of decades. It was back, so I got the Panama Railroad back around, think like the Civil War-ish era. It wasn't until about 50 years later that we got serious about trying to build a canal. Okay, and some of the problems with building that was the tropical climate and the tropical diseases vectored by primarily mosquitoes, and that was in a major way an impediment to constructing the canal system. And a couple of project leaders, basically started, and we see words like quit or failed. I mean, obviously, if we think about this, chances are it wasn't because the person was incompetent and didn't know what they were doing. It's a huge project, so lack of funding, lack of proper sanitation, lack of resources, a lot of reasons that it took as long as it did to finally get somebody in place to actually complete this. And Teddy Roosevelt, you see photos of him almost always associated with the canal system because he was president towards the tail end and basically is credited in large part with in seeing it through and dedicating resources and finally making it happen. Okay, but he didn't start under his tenure as president. He helped facilitate the completion of it. Okay, and so it's been in place for let's see, last passage. Officially, oh, there it is, 1914. So a little over 100 years ago. All right, so here is, oops, am I going the right direction? Here we go. What they had to do, okay, so you got this big river that accounts for, you got water flowing along most of the route from this ridge here towards the Atlantic, and then a much shorter section over here towards the Pacific, and then a mountain range, a ridge between the two. And so it's labeled here as the Culebra cut because they actually cut through the rock to make the canal. And that was one of the two major engineering feats of this project. That was one of them. Oops, right here, Culebra cut, big rock cut. Conceptually really straightforward. I mean, we had the technology, just the scale of it and the environment in which it was done was what the challenge was. And the other challenge, a series of locks, but one of the other major challenges was how do you account for and deal with all this elevation change here? So what they did was to address a lot of it by constructing a huge dam, therefore creating a huge reservoir, right, which backed up the water and created Gatun Lake, this huge lake in the lighter gray you see here, right? This was all river from Culebra down through here, right? Basically the shipping channel you see there more or less follows fairly closely the original river channel. And then the tributaries to that river, you can see just like any other reservoir we construct, we put a dam there, it backs up the water, it backs up in sort of these finger-like bays, if you will. Okay, but these are huge, right? This is the Isthmus of Panama, okay, that we can see. It's skinny, I mean, in the big picture relative to the continents, but it's big enough we see it on any map of the globe, any globe. Okay, so this lake is big. They construct a massive dam, and so much of the Panama Canal, in quotes, it's actually a reservoir. The canal is the route, but there's a series of locks to bring ships from the Atlantic up to the level of the lake, and then they just travel the lake. So this elevation is all the same at the water surface through the Culebra cut, and then down a series of locks to drop back down on the other side. Okay, and huge undertaking. Look, oh, there we go. This is part of a presentation I put together, one of those library series. So I got some lame attempts at humor here. Big dam lake, and then the big cut here, this Culebra cut. Here's what the thing looks in cross section. So the series of blocks here to bring boats up to the level of Gatun Lake, and then it just travels the lake through the cut, so the water level is all the same, and then back down a series of blocks. Okay, so one of the interesting things about this, well, one of the very important things from a invasive species standpoint compared to the Suez Canal, is this is all fresh water. Okay, this is all fresh water. This lake is being fed by those tributaries, and it's just being held there, right? And then that an equivalent volume, a flow of water is, once the lake was full, an equivalent volume of water is being let out all the time. And it's also being let out not just past the dam and down through the locks on this side, but also over here. Okay, but it's all fresh water. So it's fresh water. You can imagine like my elbows of the Atlantic and Pacific. You got the whole system perched up, and there's fresh water that's falling here. It's collecting, and it's going both directions. Okay, so it's a freshwater system. So that has really important implications. It's in that we have very few species have been transported across this, because you think about marine species, they get stuck on the outside of the ship, if they foul the hull, right? The hull, H-U-L-L. The marine species, You introduce them very quickly into a freshwater environment, they're done, okay? And vice versa. Any freshwater, you know, algae, freshwater mussels, freshwater, whatever that might get on the hull, as soon as they hit the marine water, they're done, okay? And in that chapter, and in that chapter, you're going to read about one of the very few species at that point known to actually make it, were tarpon. They are a fish species that can actually quickly adapt chemically and actually move through a freshwater environment, okay? All right, here's just a couple of numbers. You know, these locks are huge, 85-foot elevation change, excuse me, on one side, etc. All right, so, and there's a, all right, there we're at time. There's what a tarpon looks like if you weren't aware of it. Anybody ever catch a tarpon? Anybody? I mean, they're pretty popular, like a popular target marine species. They get quite large, and they go berserk when hooked. So you see them at massive scales and a really huge upturned mouth. Their mouth looks like they're like comparable to how big a largemouth bass's mouth can open relative to their size. All right. Okay, we're at time through that. So meet on Thursday. So somebody has some catch up to do, so let's do that. We don't have a lot of semester left here. And then we'll talk about how well, any problems with getting those first 5 observations done, okay? All right, any questions there? Questions, all right. Anybody else with any advising or registration issues?